Ahoy there, guys. So, just this morning, I finished the Game of Thrones House of the Dragon show. And I've previously done a video about this actually when I was just watching like the first few episodes. And now that I have seen all 10 episodes of season one, I kind of wanted to, give my full review on the series and what I think about it so far. And I think what I said in that original review kind of holds up to this day, which is it's definitely not as good as original Game of Thrones, but I suppose that like for the earlier seasons of that show, it's a lot to live up for. Obviously, with the last season being how it was of original Game of Thrones, I mean they could have just had the main characters of House of the Dragon diarrhea for 50 minutes straight, and it would have been better than season 8 of Game of Thrones. But luckily, that wasn't the case. I don't know that there was any scenes of diarrhea, thankfully, in this show. Um, but there was still a lot of scenes that were cool that I would like to talk about. So obviously, for those of you who have not seen the show, spoilers ahead. Um, and I suppose probably what I would say, like as a general statement about House of the Dragon, is like obviously if you liked original Game of Thrones, you'll probably like House of the Dragon. If you've never seen a Game of Thrones like episode and this is the first introduction to this world, it's not a bad introduction. Like it still serves a purpose to the world of Westeros, and like I like it. I know that all of what I've been doing, body language wise, and what I've been saying has kind of contradicted that. But no, I still like it. It's just, if I were to put one word on like my general thoughts of House of the Dragon, it's just confusing. And not the story. The story isn't confusing. It's just the way I feel about it is confusing. Like, do I like it? Don't I like it? There's some episodes where I'm like, okay, I don't really like this. And then other episodes where I'm like, okay, I really like this. But that's the problem with this show, is that it's inconsistent. And a big reason it's inconsistent is that, probably for me, like the biggest glaring thing that pops out to me is that there's a lot of time jumping that happens in this show. And for those of you who have read all of George R.R. Martin's works, you'll know that like there is a lot of setup in like the is it the Song of Dragon, the House of the? I think it might have just be called the House of Dragons, but there's like a lot of setup, and basically what the HBO reps have said is that this is going to be their slowest season because it has to set up all that so that you know who the characters are, and then you know, I know that they want to have a minimum of 4 seasons, so the next 3 seasons are just going to be chaotic as fuck, which I'm on board for. What I'll say again is that like I am enough attached to the show where like I am invested enough that if more comes out, I'll watch it. It's good enough where I'm like, hell yeah, let's watch this shit. But what I couldn't get over really was the time jump stuff because like you are kind of, you obviously, these are new characters. We haven't seen them in any Game of Thrones stuff before. So when you're trying to get attached to a certain character and then it time jumps to someone else who plays that character, or even the same character but they now have like there'd be a few episodes where like you know a character, okay, you know their motivations and all that stuff, and then like 10 years go by, they have children now all the fucking sudden, and like all of a sudden they're now kind of bitches, and there's weird foot fetish stuff. I don't what was that? What was that about? Okay, I don't even I don't know. It was in there just to be weird. I know it was, but like anyways, um yeah, no, so the time jump stuff kind of just made me mad cuz like I want to follow a character's progression, and obviously with Millie Alcock being the actress who played Rhaenyra from I think episodes 1 through 3, like I really liked her. And that was another thing that was really confusing that I've talked about at length before, was like, like I, for the longest time, I was like, am I attracted to this girl? Am I not attracted to this girl? What is going on here? Like, and the more that she was on screen, I'm like, yeah, okay. I kind of dig in Millie Alcock. She's kind of hot. The weirdest, as I said on stream, is the weirdest boner I've ever had. um, little TMI. Sorry. Let's get back into the review section of this and not about my boner. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Like, I was getting attached to the character of Rhaenyra and Alicent from their early stages of the show, and then when it time jumps and now they have children, now you're trying to get reattached to those characters and re-understanding their motives. Um, and that of their kids too. Like their kids time jump at least once as well. So you're like, okay, I can finally, okay, I'm getting to know this. What's this? His eye gets ripped out. Okay, I understand. Okay, cool. And then like the next episode, they're all fucking grown up, and all of a sudden the character who got his eye ripped out is now all hot and spiky looking. His jawline could literally be used to like you can open a can of tuna with that man's jaw. Like holy shit. He looks like, honestly, like a fucking Magic the Gathering card. Like, if you just put his face on a Magic the Gathering card and just named it some, like, planeswalker name, like Utapi Usapa, that's that's like a Star Wars fucking... Anyways, if you just put him on a Magic the Gathering card, like, he's believable as that. So there's obviously... like him being time jumped, I'm okay with it because like, I got more attached to Aemond as a character than like pretty much anyone else, and that's one thing that Game of Thrones has always prided themselves on, like writing wise, is that no one character is all evil or all good. They all kind of are somewhere in the gray, and you as the viewer have to decide where you stand morally with certain characters. Like a big one was Daemon Targaryen, from like episode 1, you're like, okay, this guy's a fucker, right? This guy's a big fucker. And then like it's weird because of the inconsistency, as I was saying, like the time jumping. Some episodes you're like, oh wow, that guy's deplorable, he just killed a bitch. And then the next episode is like, oh wow, he's a nice dad. And then the next episode it's like, oh okay, he's back on his shenanigans again. And then the next episode he's like, oh no, he's fine. Like it's just weird. And I think I'd be more okay with those kind of like jumps of character if it had not been time jumped. You know what I mean? Like, it's just weird to try to get attached to a character where it just kind of keeps jumping around like that. And again, I get that it's all set up for later seasons, and that's all fine and dandy, but I don't know. Like, I honestly, as a person who tries to think he's a good writer, I've literally am still working on my first screenplay ever, but as someone who I try to think I know what good writing is as well, like I don't know that I could have written the series any better. It just doesn't make it any less jarring as a viewer. You know what I mean? Like if you were tasked to write, to compile all of the history of the Targaryen family and where it needs to go, how would you do it? And then also if you think about like, okay, well, why would they cast two different actresses? Maybe it would have been smarter if they would have just had the one and then like put makeup or whatever. I mean, there's a big time jump, so I understand why they did it. But at the same time, like, yeah, it probably would have cost a fucking fortune to CGI, make them younger or make them older or whatever. So I get why they did that. But again, that's just goes into the whole overarching thing of I'm confused. I'm confused how I feel about things. Because it's great. It's a great show. But I'm confused as to why it's a great show. Does that make any sense? Probably not. But even that, I mean, that's confusing, right? But that's exactly what I mean. That is what the show is. The show is confusing. Even the character of Viserys, who is the king, pretty much all throughout the show. In the beginning, you kind of are like, okay, is this guy a douchebag? And then later on, it's like, oh no, he's actually really cool. And he's just a wholesome little guy who he's melting. You know, literally, like the last episode, he looks like fucking deformed Smeagol. Like his teeth, his hair, all of it just wants to escape his body. Which, you know, I feel that. I have receding hairline too. But yeah, like he was a confusing character, but he was one that I actually liked. Like I grew to like Viserys, but I suppose one thing that original Game of Thrones had that this show doesn't for me is a character that I'm rooting for. Like in season 1 of Game of Thrones, I think I rooted for, okay, I definitely rooted for Jon Snow. We can all fucking agree on that. I rooted for Sansa. I rooted for Arya. I rooted for pretty much all the Stark children. I rooted for Ned Stark because he's my rock. Okay, we love him. We love him. We stan fucking Ned Stark in this house, and if you don't, get the fuck out of here. So like there were characters that I was actively rooting for, and yeah, they were also morally questionable. Like some of them, like you're just like, okay, I don't know if I like that guy. You know, Tyrion's a good one because, you know, you don't know if you're rooting for Tyrion when you first see him. In fact, you probably aren't. Jaime Lannister is another really great example of someone that you're like, okay, I fucking hate that guy, and then weirdly later on you're like, okay, I like this guy, question mark. But it took how many seasons for us to be in that morally questionable, how do we feel about Jaime? like three seasons, and they're already trying to do that shit with Aemon, or with Daemon and Aemond. Really, they're trying to do it with both characters, like trying to be like, okay, how do you feel about this guy? Do you like him? Do you not like him? And it's just kind of, it feels rushed. So it's weird, and obviously it is because they're time jumping, as I said. But like, it just feels rushed on that, and I just still don't have a character that I'm actively fucking rooting for. Try to think of one. Honestly, can you think of one? Is there a character that you're like, yeah, man, I like Rhaenyra, but like Rhaenyra's a fucking crazy bitch too? Am I wrong? Alicent's definitely crazy. Her dad's crazy. Like everyone in that fucking show is crazy, and that's fine. But I mean, it's just I'm looking for someone to root for that I could be like, okay, I'm gonna be very like devastated if they die, or like, there's always that element in original Game of Thrones, and I don't feel like I have that. So I don't have an attachment to the characters in House of the Dragons, but as far as like a world building story, yeah, I like it. So with that said, and my overarching, main thing I will say about this show being confusing, I'm gonna give it an 8, like an 8.3. That sounds about right. Because if I was to rate original Game of Thrones, like from seasons 1 to 6, I'd give it a 9.5 ish. Oh, yeah. Overall, probably a 9.5 ish. So like, it had a lot to compete with. As I said, obviously not with the last season. The last season was like a fucking 6 or a 5 or something like that. But that's besides the point. So yeah, it had a lot to compete with, but I do think that it forges its own path. It's not just coasting off of original Game of Thrones. It tries to do its own thing, and I think it does it well. But I am really excited to see where they take the characters, and who new will enter into the realm of the Game of Thrones House of Dragon show that I can actively root for. Because so far, yeah, not really anyone is doing it for me. So that said, guys, that is going to do it for my review of Game of Thrones House of the Dragon. Let me know your thoughts down below. I know that I already did a video like this, but I, again, just wanted to update it. And also, I will be doing a review similar to this on the Rings of Power, Lord of the Rings show soon. I just still haven't watched it. I've been very, very busy, and seeing as though it's October right now, I've been doing like movie nights on my Discord, and just a lot of other stuff is going on right now. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching again. I'll see you next time. Fair winds.